Development in the case of 3 men accused in a recent gang rape. They walked out of jail today as free men after a judge dismissed the case against them because the victims are refusing to prosecute.
Legal analyst Tom Cranmer joins us now along with one of those rape suspects, attorneys Richard Glanda. Mr. Glanda, thank you both for joining us, but how did your client react to being set free today?
He was very pleased, as well as his mother. I contacted her right afterwards, and he was very delighted with the result, yes.
And what are the chances your client could still be charged in this case?
Well, it's always a possibility. That's why it was dismissed without prejudice, which means if an ongoing investigation reveals anything new, the case could be refiled against any or all of them.
Tom Cranmer, if you could fill us in then, what's your understanding? What happened here? Why did the victims refuse to testify? What did the prosecutors do with this? Can they still move forward with charges even without the victims?
Well, Stephen and Heather, kind of a fundamental tenet of both our Constitution and criminal law is that a defendant accused of a crime is entitled to face his or her accuser. So when the so-called victims failed to show up or failed to appear, the prosecution really didn't have much of a choice other than to move to dismiss the case. But the key is the court indicated that it was a dismissal without prejudice, meaning that if the prosecution can find more evidence, find additional witnesses perhaps, and or convince the victims to come forward, then they could still bring the case forward.
Tom, how devastating is this for the prosecution if the victims won't cooperate?
Well, that's always a challenge that prosecutors have, particularly in violent crime cases. But you absolutely need the victims to come forward and to cooperate and testify, and without them, you really can't present your case.
Mr. Glanda, any idea why the victims decided, or the alleged victims, I will make sure I point that out, the alleged victims decided not to press any charges in this?
I have no idea. The preliminary exam was set for this morning at 11 o'clock. All 3 defense attorneys arrived promptly, and we were ready to proceed. And we find out from the prosecutor, Ms. Samuels, that her complainant, neither of her complainants were present, and she had no alternative but to dismiss the case.
Has there been any indication that the victims were threatened in any way that you've been made aware of?
No indication to me at all, no.
So Tom, again, what does this do then, not even from the prosecution standpoint, but from just a basic legal standpoint, if so-called victims don't show up, and as Heather might have alluded, there may have been a threat of some sort, or they felt that maybe they'd best not appear in court? That's a kind of a chilling effect on other victims.
Well, it certainly does, but again, we don't know that that's the case. We just know, at least at this point, that they didn't appear. They, I'm sure, were subpoenaed to testify and frankly chose not to do that. And again, it makes it a very difficult situation for the prosecution because without the key witnesses, without the alleged victims, they cannot proceed with their case.
Now you say they're subpoenaed to testify. Does that mean that they could face some problems for not showing up?
Well, I think potentially that's the case, although, again, that puts the prosecution in a very difficult position. If you have individuals who aren't willing to step forward and aren't willing to cooperate, moving perhaps to have them arrested or held in contempt is a solution, but as you might imagine, it's probably not going to endear yourself to the so-called victims or witnesses.
All right, obviously this investigation will continue. We'll have to wait and see what the prosecution decides to do.
That's exactly right.
Mr. Glanda and Tom Cranmer, thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.